This is Michael Popok, Legal AF. Donald Trump is lying again in social media post about the E Jean Carroll case and is how he's going to handle the $83.5 million judgment that was just rendered, verdict that was just rendered by a second jury in New York. A jury already in May finding him to be a sexual abuser, or now as defined in New York, a rapist of E Jean Carroll, a liar, a person who committed defamation, caused her intentional infliction of emotional distress, and sanctioned him with punitive damages, not once, but twice by two separate federal juries. The only common elements: Lewis Kaplan, presiding senior judge, federal district court, presided over both, and Alina Habba was in some capacity in both cases, and Donald Trump, of course, was the defendant, E Jean Carroll, the plaintiff. Now, let me talk about his posting. The only thing true about this posting I'm about to read to you is I'm sure he's considering some sort of appeal. Everything else in here is false, and I'll tell you why as I break it down. Let me just get it out there first. He says, I'm in the process, along with my team, of interviewing various law firms to represent me in an appeal of one of the most ridiculous and unfair witch hunts our country has ever seen. The defamation sham presided over by a Clinton-appointed, highly partisan, Trump-hating judge, Lewis Kaplan, who was, together with certain other radical left Democrat judges, one of the most partisan and out-of-control activists I've ever appeared before. He was a bully who demanded 2 trials rather than 1, denied me due process, would not allow me to put forth vital evidence, of which there was so much, and only allowed me to be on the witness stand for minutes, telling my lawyer what to ask and telling me to give only one-word answers, as his wife and friends sat in cordoned off front row seats watching with glee. I don't know how Donald Trump would see that, but okay. This entire hoax is a disgrace. Any lawyer who takes a Trump case is either crazy or a true American patriot. I will make my decision soon. Let me break this all down. Let's start with Lewis Kaplan, the presiding judge. He's been on the bench. He's senior status federal judge. He had a long and illustrious career as a corporate litigator, working for one of the most prestigious law firms in the country, Paul Weiss, located in New York, and made partner early in his about 7th or 8th year of practice. Represented companies like Chevron, represented companies like different type of corporate America law firms. I will tell you, from having worked in a similar law firm, those partners at those law firms that are litigating those cases for Fortune 500 companies are not partisan. They're not Democrat. They're worried about the green, the money, the revenue. They're not trying to piss off corporate America. And there's nothing, I mean nothing, in Lewis Kaplan's background that indicates that he is partisan at all. It's not like he's like the president of the Democrat Club or the Democratic Socialist Club or a member of anything comparable to the Federalist Society, or that he's ever, any part of his donations or any kind of lobbying on behalf of Democratic interest has ever come to light. There is none. He went the normal track in New York that an 80-year-old, now senior status judge that you would think he would take. He went to a very fine law school, Harvard Law School, graduating in 1969. He took a clerkship in the First Circuit Court of Appeals, not related to New Jersey or New York. He then, after clerkship, went to Paul Weiss and worked there until he made partner. He stayed there as a partner until about 1994. He then became a special master for the Southern District of New York, trying various cases, handling various matters, and then got appointed by Clinton. Even Clinton is not considered to be, totally left-wing Democrat. I mean, he was the master of triangulation and moderation. And Lou Kaplan flew through the confirmation process in the Senate at that time. And there's nothing in his body of work as a judge that would indicate that he is some sort of partisan, radical, left-wing hack. He didn't run for the job. He was appointed to the job. It's a very tough job to get that, a federal judge, and he earned it by dint of his credentials and his gravitas and his sober intellect as it relates to being a jurist. That's how he got the job. Okay, so let's stop with the partisan radical Democrats, right? Sure, he was appointed by a Democrat. That's how federal judges get appointed, up to the Supreme Court. So let's just put that aside for a moment. Then he says it's an unfair witch hunt. Well, 2 federal juries, 2 separate juries, May and last week, beg to differ. Donald Trump had a jury of his peers twice, testified in the second trial. Alina Habba, his lawyer of choice, was there. He picked the jury along with Alina Habba. And he got whacked with an $83.5 million verdict, which was even higher by several times, several multiples than the amount of money that E. Jean Carroll's own lawyers told the jury that she wanted. She said, give me $27 million. That ought to shut him up. And the jury said, I got a better idea. We'll give you $83 million. And that's because of Donald Trump's acting out, being disrespectful to the judge, being disrespectful to the jury, not being believed, and the fact that this trial was focused only on punitive damages because the judge had already found as a matter of law that Donald Trump had defamed E. Jean Carroll while he was president. And the Department of Justice already elected not to intervene in the case and assert sovereign immunity or Westfall Act immunity and take Donald Trump out and have the case dismissed as being something that he was immune from suit. Once the Merrick Garland Department of Justice did that, the judge then ruled on summary judgment that the statements made as president were the exact same in quality and type as the ones that he made that the jury already found to be defamatory in May after he was president. And the only thing left for the jury was punitive damages. That's why the bulk of what Donald Trump wanted to testify about or bring in witnesses about or experts about were already not relevant. That he wanted to bring in issues and raise issues and bring in evidence about the liability case, about whether he defamed her or not. That case sailed. That ship sailed in May when Alina Habba was still one of the two lawyers representing him. The biggest difference between the first case and the second case is that Alina Habba took an active role in the second case and the jury hated her. Jury hated her. All this stuff with her outside the courtroom and all of her high dudgeon and breathless, comments, trying to shake the tambourine for Donald Trump, all of that played out poorly for her in a courtroom where she demonstrated her lack of trial skills and insulted the jury as a result. And Donald Trump insulted the jury by his harumphing and huffing and puffing and comments and muttering under his breath and walking out during the closing arguments. At the moment when the jury's about to make their decision about how big of a damage award, punitive damage award to bring against you, that's when you decide to be insulting to the female lawyer representing the female rape victim. And then he blames everybody else. Here we go again. Alina Habba and Trump. They're like conjoined twins. They're always blaming somebody else for their misconduct and their bad work. So set aside the witch hunt. Okay. This was a plaintiff's lawsuit brought and two juries found that and vindicated E. Jean Carroll. Lewis Kaplan, highly partisan, nothing in his 30-year career, in his 40-year member on the bench, almost 50 years, indicates that he is partisan in any way, shape, or form. And I defy Donald Trump or Alina Habba to point to one thing in Luke Kaplan's background that indicates that he's some sort of lefty. I defy it. I defy them to do that. And I assure you, again, being in a firm just like Paul Weiss, I know that partners there that had corporate clients were not political. They were about as apolitical as possible. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to represent oil companies and gas companies and other Fortune 50 companies. Then they go on to say that he was bullied. Trump says he was bullied to have two trials. That's a lie. The reason there were two trials is because Donald Trump defamed her while he was president and Donald Trump defamed her after he was president. The issue about him defaming her while he was president, he took a series of appeals to the Second Circuit Court of Appeals, to the D.C. Court of Appeals, not the federal one, that's the district one, to determine whether he was acting within the scope of his authority, the scope of his job description as president, whether he enjoyed immunity. Sound familiar? He raises immunity in First Amendment at every opportunity. He delayed the trial of that particular case of when he made the statements while he was president for more than 2.5 years because of him. But he was stupid enough to also defame her after he left office, giving rise to a second lawsuit that was consolidated for discovery purposes, but not for trial. So it's his stupid conduct, shameful conduct in attacking the rape victim again after he left office that opened the door to the second lawsuit. And that Lewis Kaplan didn't stay the whole case for 3 years to deny, 80-year-old E. Jean Carroll her day in court and justice. That's not on Luke Kaplan. That's on Donald Trump. And so When you hear someone tell you, I want you to have your own palm card. When you hear somebody tell you there should have been one trial, first of all, there shouldn't have been, because Donald Trump took an appeal that delayed the matter for 3 years and then was stupid enough to defame her again. Secondly, he would not have done better with one trial. If Alina Habba was going to do exactly what she did this time, be disrespectful, be impertinent, be contemptuous or contumacious, be insulting to the judge, insulting the intelligence of the jury, not understand how to put in evidence, not understand how to apply motions and orders of the judge that had already been ruled, and Donald Trump was going to act that exact same way in front of a jury, it would have been $100 million for the 2 defamations. It would have been $100 million. So I don't think one trial would have been better for Donald Trump at all. Then he says that Louis Kaplan was a bully because he didn't like Donald Trump. Okay. Donald Trump got chastised and reprimanded about half a dozen times by the judge because Donald Trump was acting out inappropriately in court. He was muttering under his breath in front of the jury. He was muttering aloud while E Jean Carroll was on the stand, trying to undermine due process, right? And the justice system. It's not appropriate. It wouldn't be appropriate for you or me. It's not appropriate because some buffoon in a long red tie used to also be the president of the United States at one time. So he was chastised and reprimanded. He didn't like that. He wanted to, he had a fight with the judge over, attending the trial. It was told point blank, if you act out and if you don't act appropriately, you're going to be barred from your own trial. And the judge told him, I'm sure you'd like that. So they had a little back and forth, as did Alina Habba with the judge. Not because he hates them, it's because their case is terrible. And they're insulting the federal judge and the federal process by the way they presented it. In terms of not being allowed to put on vital evidence, of which there was much, maybe that vital evidence was relevant, if it existed, in the first trial about liability, and he had every opportunity to put it on. If he had it, except Alina Habba so screwed up that case, so screwed the pooch by violating orders, by missing deadlines, by not getting her experts in on time, by not asking for DNA evidence when she wanted it on time. She just blew through every deadline that all of us that practice in the federal court have to comply with and abide by. And that's why Donald Trump was compromised by his own lawyer. I'm not saying that he would have won, he would have properly defended himself, but she didn't give him half a chance in the first trial. And he rewarded her by elevating her to first chair lead trial lawyer status in the second trial, as bad as she was in the first trial, including forgetting to raise sovereign presidential immunity for 3 years and getting that defense waived. All of her defenses waived. And then she was asleep at the switch in the second trial by letting evidence and witnesses come in over no objection, meaning she waived any appellate rights that she may have had for her client. This would be malpractice. If Donald Trump didn't have some sort of weirdo relationship, and I'll leave it at that, with Alina Habba, she would be sued for malpractice by him, and she should be. Then they go on to say that he was only allowed to be on the stand for a few minutes. That's because your only testimony has to be relevant or probative about damages, about punitive damages. You want to get on the stand and talk about how much money you have, you can go do that. You want to get on the stand and talk about certain elements that go to punitive damages, you can do it, but you can't go up there and, as the judge said, and have a do-over and another trial about the first trial and about liability. He's already been adjudged a sexual assault bully, and she's the victim, and that he defamed her. The only thing left for the jury here, punitive damages. So you have to limit your testimony to the things that are relevant in the courtroom. Donald Trump already lost that. So he wasn't allowed to just get up there and talk for 2 hours about how and defame her again from the stand. I mean, he was already defaming her. And the jury found out about this also, which I'm sure they hated Donald Trump and Alina Habba. He was defaming her while he was in the courtroom on social media through surrogates. There was dozens and dozens and dozens of postings during the trial, before the trial, each night of the trial, from Donald Trump attacking E Jean Carroll and lying about her again, during a time when the jury was trying to decide how big of a dollar amount to hit him with to make him stop. That just shows an out of control client and a lawyer who can't speak truth to power, right? Who can't tell him the truth, who he doesn't respect, and he can't get good counsel from her because she would have told him to shut the legal AF up at that point. Then he talked about he could only testify for minutes. He could testify for as long as he wanted to, as long as it was relevant and probative of the issue of punitive damages the jury was to decide. So that's a lie. The wife and friends of the judge in the courtroom, I don't know about that. Who cares? It's a big trial. It's not Lewis Kaplan's biggest trial, by the way. He's tried the case. He just tried the case of U.S. versus Sam Bankman-Fried about the FTX collapse. He's done Al-Qaeda cases. He's done Guantanamo Bay cases. He's done the Gambino crime family cases. He just did the case of Virginia Giuffre versus Prince Andrew. This is not his first rodeo. Okay, I got news for Donald Trump. This was not the most interesting case that he's ever handled, or the most complex case that Lewis Kaplan has handled as either a trial lawyer himself or as a judge. And then he's talking about it's a hoax. In terms of who he's interviewing, it's a very short list. He says this interview process will not take long. He doesn't have a lot of choices. No major firm like Paul Weiss, like the one that the judge worked at or the one that I worked at. No major firm. No American lawyer, top 200 firm, top 2,000 firm, top 3,000 firm would handle this case and has handled this case. All the lawyers that you see representing Donald Trump have either left their law firms to set up their own shop with one client, Donald Trump. They're in 1- and 2-person law firms. That's it. I mean, just to give you an example, I was in a 1,200 lawyer law firm. Paul Weiss is, close to 2,000 lawyers. Donald Trump has law firms that are like 1 person, 3 people. And now he's only got 2 choices, I think, for the appellate lawyer. Harmeet Dillon, who's a right-wing lawyer. I know her reasonably well from other cases. She ran for the head of the Republican National Committee and lost. She just recently appeared in the ballot banning case in Washington for Donald Trump. Came out to help him, and I think she's maybe on the short list, although she doesn't have extensive appellate experience. But there's one, and the second is John Sauer, the guy that represented Donald Trump poorly at the D.C. Court of Appeals about whether there's presidential immunity for criminal acts. We're waiting for that decision any day now, but he got roasted by that appellate panel. I don't think there's a lot of appellate lawyers left that have the gravitas to appear before the Second Circuit Court of Appeals for New York, and then ultimately with the U.S. Supreme Court. But we'll see, and we'll follow it one place on Legal AF on this 2 million person strong network, MeidasTouch Network on YouTube. Legal AF every Wednesday and Saturday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. We curate a 1-hour podcast at the intersection of law, politics, and justice, and we bring it to you. The leaders of Legal AF do hot takes like this one. If you like this one, give me a thumbs up. Keeps the network on the air, keeps me on the air until my next hot take. Until my next Legal AF. This is Michael Popok reporting.
Hey, Meidas Mighty. Love this report? Continue the conversation by following us on Instagram at MeidasTouch to keep up with the most important news of the day. What are you waiting for? Follow us now.